Information is key, and that is why we aim to unlock the doors of opinion, unveiling the stories that need to be told. Join Omobola Sandra and Sage Babalola on the Morning Express on Mainland 98.3 FM from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. as we invoke the thought-provoking discussion, tackle the tough questions, challenge assumption, and give a voice to the unheard. This is the Morning Express on Mainland 98.3 FM.
On the Morning Express.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you for staying tuned to Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. Time check right now is 7:42 a.m. It's time for Trends in the Papers on the Morning Express, where we'll be looking through the major stories trending on the front pages of our dailies. My name is Omobola Sandra, and I will not be doing this alone. Fuad Sahid is lurking somewhere in the corner. He'll be joining in via the phone line any moment from now. Today is Monday, the first Monday in the month of March, and it's the 4th of March as well. And welcome to a new week. I trust I will all have a productive one. And speaking of productive one, speaking of a new week, BVN NIN linkage. I sincerely hope that you are taking this seriously, because the federal government has said that, the government, CBN government, has also said there's no going back on the linking of your BVN and your NIN to your bank account. So please do well to visit your banks and ensure that you link your BVN and your NIN to your bank account. There are some banks that have already sent out USSD codes that you can use to link it from the comfort of your home. You can just do that without having to visit the bank. But if you're having issues as regards how to, go about using the USSD code, I would seriously, strongly suggest that you visit your bank and ensure that you link your BVN and your NIN. All right, because what we have is that there's no going back on the deadline. And as regards the food crisis, as regards cost of living, please let's look out for one another. If you have some extras, try to one or two things. It's not how much you give, but the intents of your heart that matters in this time. There's a lot of people out there that can do with the little that you have extra. So this is not time for wasting. This is not a time for you to just cook and say, nobody's going to eat this, and then you trash things. It is very important that we stay frugal in this period that we are in, please. And I really don't know what else to say as regards the busting of warehouses and busting of trucks and trailers, but I don't know the wisdom in that. But I mean, this is another person's livelihood we're talking about. Anyways, before we go into the trending stories for this morning, I'll just quickly run through the major stories that trended over the weekend. Of course, on Friday, there was the news that came in of the death of Sisi Quadri Oyibamji. I'm sure we all know him and his mouth. It was always a delight watching him. And just over the weekend there was conversation as regards, does he rehearse these insults beforehand? Apparently it just comes to him. That's an amazing talent right there. And unfortunately, we lost him to the cold hands of death on Friday. He has been buried according to Islamic rites. And on Saturday, we got another unfortunate news about the passing of Mr. Ibu, one of the comedian geniuses that we have in the country. Very unfortunate. A lot of us, especially the 90s kid, we grew up, watching Mr. Ibu on TV. And so fortunate that after a very long battle with ill health, he passed at the age of 62 on Saturday. Very unfortunate news. This is how it goes out to the creative industry. Now on Saturday, over 4,000 bureau de change operators to lose licenses in CBN crackdown as operators have been sanctioned for breaching money laundering laws. And there's a confusion as well as regards the $1 billion Binance funds claim. How that will run, we'll get to know later on. Yesterday, on Sunday, the National Assembly is planning on a review of the 28 trillion naira budget. due to the Naira fall. We'll see how that will pan out. Forex crisis. Federal government threatens sanctions as foreign airlines stick to high fares. Although the airlines have listed some conditions if they want, if they're going to go with low fares, but then the federal government is threatening sanctions as regards the high cost of air tickets. Chief Emeka Anyako, who was former Secretary General of the Commonwealth. That's a very long conversation there. I don't know what else, what exactly will be or may be the way forward as regards that particular one. But then, this is Mainland 98.3 FM. You're on to Trends in the Papers. I have my papers here with me. The Punch, Vanguard, and The Guardian in no particular order. Like I mentioned earlier, Fuad Sahid will be joining in via the phone line any moment from now as we look at the major stories on the front page of our dailies. Good morning, Fuad.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you very much. It was quite an amazing show yesterday on Political Roundtable, especially with the focus on the last focal point as regards conversation, whether or not I don't see that coming, but then it is the fact that it is being discussed. That's the equity conversation, zoning or no zoning, making it, a constitutional situation. That was the highlight for me yesterday, but it was quite an interesting run yesterday. Thank you very much for a wonderful show. All right.
Thank you, Sandra.
Yes, let's move on now to what we have here. Food crisis. That's the major headline on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Tight security at Nema stores as hoodlums loot FCT warehouses. Troops force attack on Abuja warehouse, arrest 5. Hoodlums cart away rice and others. And we also have here policemen deployed in Bayelsa, Kaduna, Delta, Osun warehouses. Reforms not meant to inflict hardship, says Vice President Kashim Shettima. So, taking away a cue from yesterday's conversation, I think it was Joseph Olorunṣọ that said that, this issue of people attacking warehouses, attacking trailers and, trucks and all of that, and cutting away or looting away, because whether we like it or not, stealing is stealing. There's not another name to call it. Irrespective of whatever you're going through, stealing is still stealing. All right. So, looting away of, food items and all of that. A lot of business owners, are lamenting at this time now. But can we really say that the food crisis and all of that the statement from the government saying that people are hoarding food may or may not be what is, gingering all of these attacks, that these people are hoarders, let's take what belongs to us? What do you think as regards this looting of warehouses and trucks and trailers?
Well, I think we must first establish the fact that there are no excuses really for that kind of criminality. Don't jump into people's businesses and loot it dry on the excuse that we are hungry. That's stealing. Stealing is stealing, and the criminal act that must be condemned completely. Because those warehouses that have been looted are owned by people who have struggled. Some of them are still on loans. They borrowed money. Some of them have just stock up. And when you loot it, like you are creating more problem because people own these businesses, and some of their life savings, some of their life investments have been put in those businesses. So there are really no justification for those to begin to, bring people's, because it's just like boggling people's things. And if it's not condemned, the next thing we're going to be seeing is that they're going to be attacking people's house in the name of being hungry, and at that point we're heading towards a state of anarchy, complete anarchy. But I also agree with you that again, some of the statements that have been made in recent times by the government could have also led to some of these things. Because we kept asking, these idea of people are hoarding food. Is it the food the government gave to them or their own private money? Is it the food that they bought with their private money? Because the way the government was saying it, you have thought that they give them those food to share to people and they were hoarding it. You understand? So there are people who are thought that, maybe some people are keeping, again, remember COVID. Yeah. When COVID happened, and then where else it was?
Noodles, rices, some traditional rulers as well were also complicit of that one too.
Those ones were things given to people by government to share. Not this one that people bought with their own money. You understand? So there are clear distinctions to this thing. Those warehouses of COVID, if you notice, most of the noodles and all those things were even branded.
Yes.
COVID palliative,
do not sell.
COVID and all of that. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, so that's quite understandable that look, people have been given these things to share to people, and then they kept it, they were holding it, maybe for political reasons. You understand? But this is a different situation, Sandra. These are people who had invested their private money in buying these things, and then people are now looting it. In Abuja now, it's not just one warehouse. Warehouses, that's the report. You understand? So, and these are not, I'm not sure these warehouses are owned by government. Even NEMA said that some of the warehouses in Abuja does not even belong to them. So I suspect those warehouses belong to some private people. So it's important that, but again, the government has to do something, Sandra. It is one thing that leads to one thing for us to now be in this particular situation. And it is because of the level of poverty, the suffering in the land. You know, we can continue to live in denial, Sandra. And assume that or begin to pretend that nothing is happening. Things are happening, like they always say, if you are out there, you understand how bad things are. You know, once in a while, as a man that I have to buy one or two things for the family, it's not even double the price now. It's triple the price.
Yeah.
Sometimes more than triple the price.
About 200%.
And so you now ask yourself that, look, it is because I can afford this thing that I'm even able to buy. How would the ordinary people out there get near most of these things? You understand what I'm saying? The literally two things that people use to help themselves, you know, to live, you know, a near decent life. Egg is now 150 naira per one. You know, they said it's 200. They are correcting themselves. They say 200 naira per one egg standard. And you can.
And it's not even big eggs. What carry on?
You know, small. You know, so Gary, ask our women. They'll tell you how bad things have become. Rice is not anything. And you know the sad part, Sandra, although we should ignore people like that, a lot of them are just political jobbers, psychopaths. Because there are a couple of people I have on social media who are, you know, party people close to government. And if you see the rationalization of this current situation, you marvel at their thinking. To the extent that they are even gaslighting the other Nigerians who are complaining at this time. You know, you now see them making ridiculous comparisons of how much they buy one fufu in the UK. And how much you are buying fufu in Nigeria. Can you see how ridiculous food can be?
Let's not bring that fufu conversation, I beg of you.
But again, it is what it is. I'm just hoping that, look, the government will come and will do something very fast. The Kashim Shettima, the vice president, said that people should protest reasonably. I say, look, when somebody is hungry to a particular extent, there's a way you start to think irrationally, the brain will work somehow. So I'm just hoping that the government will do something, Sandra. It's getting very, very bad out there.
Well, there's, just as you have rightly mentioned, the Vice President Kashim Shettima has urged Nigerians to apply discretion in protesting the current economic hardship in the country, asking them to do so in a responsible and mature manner. And he said this during the 29th pre-Ramadan lecture that was organized by the University of Lagos Muslim alumni in Lagos. And that's another conversation for the fact that Ramadan is coming in by this weekend or so. And, you know, with it comes some price going up. You know, and with the current food crisis now, with Ramadan coming in as well, there are foresights of, you know, challenging times, more challenging times or severe challenging times for Nigeria.
So I hope they are not trying to blame Ramadan now. But you know, we keep blaming everything. Yes, now the Ramadan is the problem. People have always been living their lives.
People have been hungry.
It's not Ramadan.
Protest was not before Ramadan. It was not after Ramadan.
Because of Ramadan that people are ordering. Because Ramadan is coming, that people are now increasing. They should just do Ramadan out of this one. Our problem is our problem. And we are not the only countries that will be going into the fasting period, the Muslim fasting period. We should let's just pay attention to these things and address, you know, this idea of living in denial, chasing shadows, making excuses. You know, it's becoming very troubling for me, Sandra. And for the vice president, we say that people should be mature in the way they handle these things. And an hungry man is a man that is not thinking well.
It's an angry man, Ford.
When he's angry, you know, anger in itself is a psychological thing, it's a mental problem. When you are angry, you are not thinking well. It's after the anger has gone down that you now begin to see things properly. So we would advise that, look, the government takes responsibility and start to take this issue seriously. We are not in a very good place, Sandra. I know what I'm saying.
Thank you very much, Fuad. We're not in a very good place. Well, that's what is prevalent now. Looting of food warehouses, looting of trucks and trailers. I mean, just this weekend there was also the story that came in from Kaduna. Boa trail, exactly. Where the driver said this allegedly that he came down to pray he came down to pray in a mosque nearby, and while he was praying. They looted. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
You not pray. Go and pray when you get to your destination.
Maybe you should just keep driving. I think maybe you should just keep driving. Maybe that's the wisdom that is necessary.
Unfortunately, there are people who are suggesting that people who move food and all of that should now begin to look at moving them in the middle of the night. But what about the insecurity concerns too? These drivers are human beings, so they could be attacked at night. Because the fear is that look, when you move food around now, you don't know. It happened in Lagos too, where I think somebody came with there was this truck of yam that was looted completely
on the island.
On the island, so people are now afraid to even move their normal goods around now for the fear of being looted. And when they loot, you are the one that will run into trouble. I'm not sure anybody is going to take responsibility. So it's very, very unfortunate. It's never been this bad. And I grew up in Nigeria. This is over 4 decades of my life as a Nigerian, and I understand that I don't think it has been this bad. Even in the military era, we did have this kind of ridiculous situation,
Thank you very much, Fad. As it is now, to forestall any security breach at NEMA facilities, the DG, Mustafa Ahmed, has directed zonal directors and heads of operation to strengthen security in and around the agency's offices and warehouses nationwide. And in case someone is wondering, how do people know that there are food items or agro products in these warehouses? So apparently what happened is that these hoodlums were the ones who attacked during the 2020 raid. So they were like, if it was there then, it will probably still be
there now.
So let's go and check.
So those guys are still around, the 2020 guys.
Yes, that's what we are getting from the report now, that these are people that they were the same people who attacked in 2020. Well,
I think one of the papers, Sandra, is saying the military guys and police will now be the ones in charge of sharing things. Because again, government wants to share, and they will have to move these things around. So there's that fear and apprehension now that we have hoodlums attacking trucks and all of those things. So they have to bring in the military. It's just this is an avoidable crisis, Sandra. This is a crisis we could have avoided, really. And we kept telling the government at that time, don't bring people down to the point of tokenism, where they have to wait for government rights and bills to live their life. Just create an enabling environment for them to make a decent living, for them to be able to earn an income that can take care of themselves and their families. Now there's even a problem. To share has become a problem. To store has become a problem.
Well, what we have here is that these warehouses will be tightly secured, and whenever they are moving out, there will also be security moving out with them. But the stories on page 2 of the Punch newspaper: food crisis, tight security at NEMA stores as hoodlums loot FCT warehouses. Moving on now, still on the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have here: Tom Polo canvasses more crude output. NAF destroys illegal refineries. That conversation is still there, and the story is on page 42 of the Punch newspaper. So just very, very quickly, what we have is that the Nigerian Air Force, that's the NAF, said that its men discovered and destroyed 4 illegal crude oil refining sites at Krakama and Temakiri in the Degema local government area of Rivers State. And in a statement, they said the sites were destroyed in an operation conducted on March 1st, 2024. Cotonou ports were at the active illegal refining sites, and they were there to load crude oil. And these 2 illegal sites, as well as the boats, were subsequently struck, engulfed in flames, and destroyed. All right. I think we've asked questions as regards why they destroy illegal refineries, or why they destroy tankers with illegal crude or whatnot. I think we had that conversation for. I don't know if you remember. And
we've not gotten any answers. Any reasonable answers.
The reason is that's the instruction that they give them, and so that's what. And that if it is impounded, it could be restolen.
How ridiculous can that kind of answer?
It could be restolen and resold again. So that's the concern.
And Sandra, do you now know why we are not really getting people prosecuted? Because again, these vessels, these vessels stealing crude oil, these people operating illegal refineries, they are not ghosts and spirits. And so if the instruction is to destroy when you arrest, it means you are destroying evidence. And that's why I don't know. I think it's hardly difficult for you to pick when we've actually been we've ever prosecuted people who are involved in this act. The only thing is that we've arrested people, blah blah blah. But I don't know whether we've been able to report, or the papers have been able to report at any time prosecution and then of course conviction of people who engage in this act. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you say it is stolen and it is illegal, when you arrest and then you destroy, then where is the evidence? How do you prosecute when you are destroying evidence? And then the product itself is when you say you have the product and then you burn and destroy, that means you are also wasting the product. Are we not wasting the product? Because the crude oil is still there and then you burn it with the crude oil. So that means we are also unless we are just in the sea that these things have been destroyed though. You know that's arrangement.
It's to avoid that arrangement.
Are you sure we are avoiding it really?
Well,
you don't understand what I'm saying.
I'm with you for
because you said you caught a vessel that with stolen crude and then you destroy. That means you destroy the vessel, you destroy the product. Apart from the fact that you are destroying evidence, and that's why people are asking, are we really serious about this? You know, we're just deceiving ourselves. You understand what? And then who takes the instruction? So there's still a lot of shadiness around this issue of crude theft. Sandra, let's be out of here. There are still a lot of unanswered questions. Yes.
Speaking of crude theft, Tompolo, Niger Delta militant leader, has said that he has appealed to all Nigerians to guard against greedy saboteurs of the nation's oil and gas economy. And he said he will strive to ensure an increase in the daily crude oil production output by checking oil theft. Remember, he won Internal Security Meritorious Award by NUJ.
Those ones just went there to go and help themselves.
But then when we have
those ones, you know this award now. You know how this thing. In funny is our constituency, so I don't want to put out any awards.
It's okay.
It's just to go and help themselves.
It's okay, Fred. Thank you. All right, well, Tompolo is saying here, and I'm quoting, our economy is in dire need of survival, so we cannot fold our arms and allow some people to sabotage the nation's economy because of greed. All right, and he acknowledged, and he said, and I quote, the critical role of the media. I cannot be overemphasized that there's a lot we can do. But then, I mean, Tompolo has been commissioned by the government, that's Tantita Security Services, to ensure that they guide our pipelines and whatnot. So, what are your thoughts as regards this statement from Mr. Tompolo saying that we need more crude output, and for us to have more crude output, we need to check our oil thieves, which he was commissioned to check.
What he's saying about us needing more crude output is saying the obvious. We've said that several. To a great extent, we still approach a mono economy that is heavily dependent on crude oil, on oil production. And until we're able to ramp up production to a reasonable level where we're able to meet our domestic needs, our OPEC quota, we still continue to struggle. You just read out now that we have to review the 2024 budget again. We kept talking about deficit. It's not even denial for. There are so many things that is making whatever we've appropriated for 2024 unrealizable. It's going to be very difficult. The deficit is going to go up, and that's why as early as the third month of the year, there's already a call for a review of that budget, because again, most of the projections are becoming unrealistic. So since we operate in a terribly mono-economic situation, it is important for us to ramp up. So what Tompolo is saying on that one is correct. Now, on the issue of fighting food theft, I'm hoping that the people that give him the job will be able to take stock and say, we've engaged you for over 2 years or 3 years. I can't remember when he was engaged, giving the job. How well have you performed? If the former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, is still saying that 80% of our crude output is still stolen, then we need to check ourselves if the transmission arrangement is still working. Look, Pompolo has a very beautiful contract. Every contractor who gets a government 4 billion naira money every month will be desperate to keep that kind of job. If you understand what I'm saying. And that's why you see that Pompolo is greeting everybody. When they celebrate their birthday, he splashes birthday advertorials on. He's a friend of the media. So I'm not surprised that NUJ is doing this. And then again, I think he's doing a lot of PR, a lot of, just to ensure he keeps the job. He congratulates the president, congratulates ministers, congratulates NNPL. He wants the job desperately. He wants to keep the job desperately. But we need to ask ourselves, when we give jobs, see the way you have described him now, a former militant, and then you give protection of fighting crude oil to a militant because he has it, so it's all ridiculous, Sandra.
Well, there's a saying that is only somebody that can know how to get to somebody. So, but I really don't know.
How are you sure of the commitment of that somebody to tackling the somebody you are talking about? Is that what you are saying? But how are you sure the only himself will not collaborate with the other only? And how do you ensure the commitment of that person towards that thing? That's what we're saying. Look, Sandra, we need some forensic understanding of our food production. I think it was recently some few months ago, I was watching a video of Aramco. That was the Saudi Arabia version of NNPCL of Nigeria.
Yeah.
And now they monitor crude output in Saudi Arabia. Sandra, just a control room, just one control room like this. All the pipelines are well monitored. 1 liter of crude cannot leave those facilities without them knowing. Just technology, using technology. We are still using Santita. Militant. Anyway.
All right. Thank you very much.
It's a problem for us to solve, Sandra,
Well, the story is on page 42 of the Punch newspaper. That's all we can take from there. Above the masthead of the Punch, we have here reports Nigerian officials demanding bribes. Tinubu tells Qatari investors, and that is on page 19 of the Punch newspaper. Fuad, I don't know, maybe just my I don't know. Yeah, exactly. What do you think about that statement? How do you think that paints us as a country? What do you think of the statement saying that Qatari captains of industry should report any Nigerian official who demands any form of bribe before allowing them to do business in the country?
It would be nice to know the context at which the president made that statement.
Okay, so let me quote him verbatim. All right. Do not offer a bribe to any of our people, and if it is requested or taken from you, report to us. You will have access to me. And that's what he said.
The question I would love to ask the president is that, look, did any Qatari official tell him or complain to him that, look, your people are demanding bribe from us, for him to have issued made that statement? You don't understand what I'm saying?
Yes, because why was that statement necessary?
So if the Qatari officials are complaining to him about the activities of our officials in Qatar, maybe that was what necessitated him making that statement. But if there was no complaint, then the question is, why did he make that statement? You understand? Because there's a lot of back and forth on this particular one. Some people have said that, he painted Nigerians in bad light, it was a demarketing of the country and all of that. But it would have been nice to have a complete picture as to what happened, what led to what, for the president to have made that statement. But if there was no complaint to him about the activities of officials in Qatar, whether they were demanding bribe or not, then that statement was so irrelevant. It was indeed an attempt. It was a demarketing of the country. But again, we don't have the complete story. We don't have the complete picture, and we should not also live in denial, Sandra, because we know some of the activities of some of our officials when it comes to doing their job. So whatever it is just important for us to ask ourselves as a people: how far are we ready to handle the issue of morality? How well are we even representing the country in our actions and inactions? You understand what I'm saying? So for me, that story is not complete until we understand the context and the situation that led the president to issue that statement.
Well, I also have another interesting statement here, aside from the many other things that he said, and noting that the war against corruption and insecurity in Nigeria had been significantly strengthened with the appointment of former chairman of EFCC, Nuhu Ribadu, as national security. As national security.
Maybe because Ribadu was there with him, so he needed to just pay glowing. You know, sometimes when you look at people, you just want to make them feel good. But if it's, you see, the fact is the fact. And not till today, people are still questioning the appointment of Nuhu Ribadu as the national security advisor. Not only questioning his capacity and ability to be able to deliver on the job. They are talking about the chain of command within the military. And there are people who think that because he's a former police officer, it will be extremely difficult for him to get the loyalty and support of our military structure. That's on one part. The other part is what we have seen of his activity. I'm sorry, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu is still available everywhere. Sandra, look, I think there's hardly any trip of the president that I've not seen it.
There's none. I've not heard of any.
He's everywhere and anywhere. They are discussing political party matters there. They are discussing political crisis. Is the center of it. Between Wiki and Fubara, NSA Ribadu is the one there signing agreement. He's everywhere and anywhere at the NSA. Even this Binance issue recently, you know, some of the officials were said to have been detained, reportedly detained. They said it was the office of the NSA that even detained. So Mr. Ribadu is everywhere. And there are people who think that, look, he's not concentrating on the real issues of security in the country. This is an economic summit forum, right? Sandra, between Qatar and Nigeria.
Yes.
I would have thought that it's supposed to be more of the economic team of the president. The NSA is there, he's everywhere.
Yeah,
look, if the president said he has done fantastically well, let us judge him by what we have on ground. How secure are Nigerians?
That's all. Thank you.
So that's on that.
All right, so you're listening to Trends in the Papers on Mainland 98.3 FM. We're looking through major trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. We're live on Facebook and YouTube, by the way. Thank you very much. I see some messages. I appreciate. Do well to like and share. Platforms would appreciate that. Let's move on now to the Guardian newspaper. The major headline there, it says Nigeria's terrorism index. Terror attacks decline amid new recruitments and rise in violent conflicts. And that is on page 6 of the Guardian. And we have riders here. 2023 terrorism death rose by 8,352. It's representing 22% more than 2022. Attacks deadlier with 2.5% in 2023 as against 1.6% in 2022. Nigeria recorded its first increase in terrorism in 3 years in 2023, with total deaths rising by 34% to 524. Sahel region most affected, with almost half of all deaths at 26% attacks. Burkina Faso suffers worst impact, with death rising by 68%. Lack of political will to deal with causes and consequences are fueling terrorism, says Professor Oseni. There will be progress in combating terrorism when countries in Sahel effectively manage political leadership. So, terrorism in 2023 has remained a global threat, as a record of 8,352 deaths, representing 22% increase from the previous year. So the GTI, that's Global Terrorism Index 2024, said the Central Sahel region has conclusively overtaken the Middle East as terrorism epic center, with Islamic State and Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, JNIM, a franchise of Al-Qaeda, being the most active terrorist organizations. And there's just a lot to take away from this one, but what we have now is, notwithstanding the concerns, GTI report noted that while deaths has reduced in the last few years, there was an uptick last year amid concerns about rising violent conflicts outside of terrorism, as well as the ability of the federal government to focus on sustained peace initiatives in Borno State, allocating adequate resources to defector rehabilitation. I don't know about that though, but allocating adequate resources to defector rehabilitation programs, enhancing services in rural areas to weaken recruitment efforts. So, Fuad, political will to carry out all. You just read out, the initiatives that have been brought to fore to, take out, to stamp out this thing. One, allocate adequate resources to defector rehabilitation programs. That's those who are repented terrorists. All right, and enhancing services in the rural areas so that it will be difficult for these organizations to recruit people into the organizations for terrorism.
Well, I think what this report has done is to look at the problem and also look at efforts, and then of course look at sustainable ways of ensuring that this issue becomes a thing of the past. I think the reality of Nigeria, we should just focus on Nigeria, not really worry about. Again, we might talk about the Maghreb region, the Middle East, and all of those kind of things. That's a bigger conversation. But back to Nigeria, I think recently, this particular government gave about 50 billion naira as to non-kinetic approach to tackling insecurity and terrorism in the north. I think even in the northeast particularly. And I think these are some of the things that should be looked into. Remember, Shegumi told me that, look, again, not speaking for some of these criminals, because we have to tell him that look, a lot of them as a result of lack of governance, really. They are out there, they have no secure future, there's really no hope for them. So they look at the other side and they find hope, and then they just go into the trenches to join the criminal gangs, who now use the issue of religion to lace their criminal acts. You understand what I'm saying? So I think the fact is that, look, as we look at the kinetic approach, we also have to look at non-kinetic approach. And I agree to the idea of providing infrastructure, empowering people, giving them more education, supporting businesses. When people live a normal life, when they are able to fend for themselves, when they know that their future is secure within the society, probably will be difficult for them, to join the criminal gangs, go into the trenches and then under the guise of Islam or whatever religion, start to terrorize people, if you understand what I'm saying. So, but it has to be in a sustainable way. And that's why it's important to talk about the political way to do the right thing. Look, we have a lot of our northern brothers who call the show regularly. And what they say is that, look, in some of these states, there's no governance. The governors are just stealing money. Most of these states, I think one of our callers talked about Yobe State. And he said that, look, when you talk about governance in Yobe State, it's 0%. Nothing is happening. It's just, and I've seen the governor doing all this PR and giving people with
sharing last week. Yobe sharing.
They need those are the things we are talking about. The people on ground are telling us that, look, these guys are not doing anything, they're just passing around people for big fun. And now they're making more money. And that's why it's also important that, look, we need to hold some of these governors to account. What are they really doing in their state? Because it is as a result of all of this misgovernance that it has become so easy for criminals to recruit people. They just show them that, look, you are here, nothing is working for you. Come and join us.
All right. Well,
which is unfortunate.
It is actually. There's a lot to take away from this report. I mean, we have here that a conflict manager and international affairs analyst, Alade Abiodun, attributes the increase in terrorism to persistently weak governance characterized by corruption, democratic backsliding, legitimacy deficits, and human rights violations. We also have here that in the face of terrorism, Nigeria has a sleeping government, and the government needs to stand up to the occasion. And so
Sandra, you remember that last year there was this poverty index, state by state analysis of the poverty index in Nigeria. And look at the situation of the north. States like Sokoto State, Yobe State, Gombe State, where almost about 80 to 85% of residents in those states are said to be living below poverty line. You can't have that level of poverty in a region and not have that corresponding insecurity.
Just to counter what you're saying, Dr. Tunde Oseni is saying that, yes, some people argue that poverty is the cause of terrorism, which is not always the case. That there are some individuals who are not economically poor, but are involved in terrorism as well.
They are benefiting from the terrorism. You understand what I'm saying?
The victims.
What I'm saying is that those that are not economically poor but are also into terrorism are the major beneficiaries of the problem.
Okay.
Because there are also what you call terrorist markets. They make money from the sorry situation. They sell weapons, they do all manner of things, they take ransom and all of that. But the larger foot soldiers of these terrorists are victims of misgovernance. Because what we are saying here is that, look, the so-called war merchants are able to recruit people because of the level of poverty. They just call them and show them the green light that look, on this other side you have a better life. Why stay open trying to do something like this when you can join us, do criminality and make a lot of money? If we give you free women and all of those kind of things. So that's what we're saying, that there's no way you talk about addressing terrorism without looking at the poverty index in the areas where this thing is festering. It's impossible.
All right. Thank you very much. That story is on pages 6 and 44 of the Guardian newspaper. Still on Mainland FMs. Thank you for staying tuned. Still on trending stories. Very quickly now we have to move. Hardship. Military and paramilitary to distribute food as hoodlums loot warehouses. And that is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. I think Fuad mentioned this earlier on. We also have here, blame governors for restructuring delay and economic downturn. And that is on page 5 of the Guardian. Excuse me. Foundation member of APC, All Progressives Congress, Osita Okechukwu, has said the 36 state governors should be held responsible for the setback recorded in the restructuring of the country. And he particularly referred to governors' refusal to implement the 4th and 5th amendments to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria to buttress his claim. He said, and I quote, "When the word restructuring is booted around, we often have the challenge, what do you mean by restructuring? Well, I don't even like the word. I prefer expressions like reconfiguration, decentralization." And those who lead us recognize the necessity of it. They recognize the importance and almost the inevitability of decentralization until they get into power. So, what do you think, Fuad, the fact that governors are, the ones who are making it difficult for us to actually have, a restructure of our constitution?
They are part of the problem, but they are not solely the problem.
Okay.
And Mr. Osita is modeling things up. He first talked about, doesn't like the word restructuring, but he wants reconfiguration or decentralization. It's all semantic. We all know our problem. We all know where the problem is. So if he's talking about the governors, I agree that they are also part of the problem. But it's not just them. What was the commitment of the National Assembly members? What was the commitment of the presidency to restructuring? People have been asking the question, why is it that the president is not as committed to restructuring, or whatever name you want to call it, like when he was not in power? You understand what I'm saying? And in recent time, he said that, look, he's not in a hurry to restructure. Suddenly, the president is not in a hurry to restructure. And he's saying that, look, what he wants to do is to put some solid foundation in place before he talks about restructuring. I'm saying that, look, the solid foundation in itself is embedded in restructuring. Because you cannot put a solid foundation in place without restructuring. In fact, that solid foundation is the restructuring, the configuration, the centralization we are talking about. And so that's why people are saying that, look, he needs to commit to it. That Fẹ́nifẹ́re is saying it. Nnamdi is saying it. That, look, Mr. President, you are a major advocate of restructuring. Why have you suddenly gone silent? It's not your agenda, your major agenda. So that's on that. Now for the governors. You know what, Sandra? I agree completely to that. Our governors are part of the problem. And you know why? It's not that the governors are not happy with restructuring or reconfiguration. But when it comes to restructuring and reconfiguration, they pick and choose the ones to support. Now that we are talking about the issue of state police, you see that all of the governors are so happy about it. They are happy because you know why? They want to control the state policing apparatus. So
they are selective in what part of reconstruction we are doing or restructuring.
So when we now talk about autonomy for local government, to engender, governors, they say no to that one. You don't understand why. So when it comes to restructuring, they are not selfless. They are not even committed to the nation. The only thing they are committed to is how to line their pockets and then, of course, keep themselves in power, perpetually in power. And so when it comes to restructuring, they will first check, okay, this one will not, no. So they look at their own interest, not the national interest, not the generality of the good of the people. It's more about their own personal interest. Because again, when President Buhari made that attempt to ensure that local government money go to them by issuing an executive order, all of the governors went to court, to the level of the Supreme Court. But the same governors are the ones that will talk about true federalism. In fact, some of the governors that went to court to fight the idea of local government getting their money directly are governors who call themselves progressives in the southwest here. And how can you be a progressive without supporting decentralization of government and true federalism? So that's why I say that the so-called progressives of today are just progressive by name. In commitment and action, they are not progressive. They are just lying. If you like, wear the cap of Awolowo and put his sunglasses, his spectacle. That will not make you a progressive. We only know progressive by what they commit to. And I'm sorry, I doubt if there are real progressives still existing again in the political class.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Fuad. Well, that story is on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. We don't have so much time, so very quickly, still on the front page of the Guardian, experts blame social media for mass failure in WAEC and other exams at NECO as well. There's always on page there's always a TikTok. Almost every week, there's a TikTok challenge that you have to do, and there's this, young.
And they are not reading again.
This wants to beat me. All right, well, teachers, endless wait for federal government's promises of improved salary and welfare. That's on page 4. And there's just a lot to take away from that one. Well, that's all we can take from The Guardian. We have very little time left. So let's rush through stories trending on the front page of Vanguard newspaper. It is still Mainland 98.3 FM. There's quite a lot of messages that I see here on Facebook. Not to worry. By Milan Focus, we'll try to squeeze them in as we move
with the messages on Milan Focus.
Yes, with the messages on Milan Focus. Yes. All right. Major headline on the front page of Vanguard: Federal government fights inflation, mops up 5 trillion naira, and we have writers here that says to raise interest rates, reprice fixed income yields. CBN meets foreign investors over forex reforms and NPR hike. Says there'll be free entry and exit. That's on page 19. I don't know if we have enough time, but just a very quick background to that. Efforts by the federal government to curb rising inflation will lead to 5 trillion naira cash mop-up from the banking industry as the CBN implements the hike in banks' cash reserve ratio to 45%. The CR, that's cash reserve ratio, is banks' cash reserves for purposes of meeting cash obligations on demand was 32.5% before, and now it has been moved to 45% in an apparent bid to cut. It just basically means that the money that banks have in their vaults has now been reduced. So maybe they're supposed to have 5 naira. That's the max they can have in their vault. So it has now been reduced to, let's say, like about 1 naira or 2 naira, basically. So the financial, we have also learned that the CBN is now working with some foreign portfolio investors, FPIs, to address concerns over recent reforms introduced in the foreign exchange market. And all. There's a lot to take away from this. Also, trying to mop up high interest rates on treasury bills. There's also free entry exit for FPIs, and all recommendations from a lot
of financial, all manner of financial whatever.
Suggestions and recommendations and counsel.
A lot from that report. I read that report and I'm like, yes, we can do all manner of monetary, fiscal policies, adjustments there and there to tackle inflation. But I think generally experts have said that look, the inflationary trend in Nigeria is as a result of so many things. So and the best that monetary fiscal policies that CBN is embarking on can do is just help. It's not going to solve the problem completely. If you understand what we're saying, Sandra. But again, these are efforts. We hope that these efforts will at least turn the tide while we look at the more sustainable approach to the problem. There's no time in the Sandra, so let's just.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Fad. The story is on page 19, by the way, as regards, all of the recommendations that we have. Also, only implementation of agreement will stop nationwide strike, NLC insists. And that's on page 9 of Vanguard.
They are in order on that. That's
okay. Well, misinformation undermining military's fight against terrorism, says CDS. That's Chief of Defense Staff. And that's
they should counter the misinformation with proper information. That's why they have their information arm to the military. So when there's misinformation, they should also step up their own information. So you counter misinformation with proper information. So they need to do that. They have PROs, they have information officers to ensure that the proper information goes out there.
Well, that's all we can take this morning as regards the major trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. We'll take a very short break now and pay some bills, and we'll be back. When we come back, it's Mainland Focus, where we pick 2 or more major stories off the front page of our dailies, and then we open up the phone line for you, our dear listener, to share your contribution and your thoughts as regards those. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
When your whole world comes crashing down, please look up. The team, it's showtime. Brains waking up. What'd you have for breakfast? We are the sound of Lagos, and this is Mainland 98.3 FM. Lagos.
Didn't see that coming, did you? To cook correct food, they always give me joy. That's why anytime when I cook like this, I dey always season am with no cubes. Come add correct vegetables inside. Ugu, tatashe, shombo, onions. No one wey I no dey put. Na im make my pikin dem dey always enjoy my cooking.
Daddy, I never available. I want more.
You see? Sama all your food with correct vegetables. Come season am with no cubes for that ogbonge delicious taste. Today, chop better.
Number 1001 reason to love Golden Penny pasta. It's rich in protein. Number 1002 contains fiber. Number 1003, it tastes great. Number